Sometime in the fading quiet of a forgotten November afternoon, Stuart Landry stood alone before the rust-scarred door of Unit 47, the kind of place where broken lives were packed into cardboard boxes and left to drown in dust. His breath stung in the cold as bidders drifted away, shaking their heads at the mold, the water damage, the ruins of someone else's story. But Stuart wasn't looking at rot. He was looking at one final chance, the kind a desperate man takes when the world has already stripped everything else from him. His son Kevin waited in the truck behind him, pretending he didn't see the trembling in his father's hands. 8 months of living in a pickup had carved quiet hollows beneath their eyes, but neither complained. They were a team, bound by loss, sharpened by hunger, sustained by a love that refused to die. When the auctioneer's voice cracked through the air, Stuart's instincts, the same instincts that once kept him alive in the Navy, pushed him forward. One bid, then another, until the last of his money clung to a fragile gamble no one else wanted. Minutes later, when the door screeched upward, the stink of mildew rolled out like a warning. But in the farthest corner, 3 bundles sat on a pallet, wrapped in industrial plastic untouched by water. Stuart's pulse hammered as he knelt beside them. Something about their intentional placement felt like a message left for the future. He didn't know yet that opening them would shift the ground beneath his entire life, or that hidden inside was technology the world believed destroyed. A secret powerful enough to drag him from homelessness to the halls of Congress. The unraveling began with a pocket knife and a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Stuart sliced through the plastic like he'd done 1,000 times on construction sites, but nothing prepared him for what gleamed inside. A sleek carbon-bodied device, dark as obsidian, humming with quiet potential. Not a drone meant for hobbyists. This was something born from military-grade ambition. Kevin leaned in, awe stretching across his face, the kind of wonder he hadn't felt since childhood. As they unwrapped all 3, Stuart's engineering instincts recognized the precision of the materials, the retractable rotors, the unusual sensor arrays. These weren't prototypes from a company that simply went bankrupt. These were pieces of a legacy someone had hidden with purpose. And in the fading light, the name etched into the alloy, Skytech Industries, ignited a memory of Raymond, Stuart's late brother-in-law. Brilliant, secretive, gone too soon. The further they researched, the deeper the truth reached. Skytech's Alpha Series drones had been the subject of rumor for years, whispered about in technological forums as lost holy grails. Some said they were worth hundreds of thousands, others millions. But all agreed on one thing: every unit was believed destroyed. Yet here they lay, 3 ghosts of a forgotten future nestled in the truck bed of a homeless father and his son. That night they didn't sleep. Voices drifted from the cab into the empty parking lot, speculation, disbelief, fragile hope. But their discovery wasn't a miracle. It was a fuse, and before long it would burn into the lives of CEOs, lawyers, journalists, and eventually federal agents. Stuart just knew one thing. After years of being crushed by life's weight, he finally held something that could lift them out of the dark, or drag them deeper. Their search for truth led them into the quiet halls of a university engineering building, where Professor Alberta Moss examined the drone with the kind of reverence usually reserved for relics. Her sharp eyes traced its lines, her hands lingering over its unbroken seals. When she finally spoke, her voice carried both awe and warning. "These weren't meant to survive," she murmured. "If they're functional, they're worth millions. But ownership, legality, intentions, these things get complicated fast." And complications came quickly. She connected them with an intellectual property attorney, Randall Pierce, A Navy veteran, steady, calm, exactly the kind of man who could anchor the tidal wave forming around them. As he sifted through Raymond's old documents, a hidden truth surfaced. Raymond had acquired the drones legally before the bankruptcy, leaving proof, receipts, signatures, notarized transfers. The discovery hit Stewart like sunlight after a storm. For the first time in years, he could imagine a life not carved from struggle. But hope is fragile around valuable things. Within days, corporations circled like hungry silhouettes. Some offered cash, others dangled contracts, reporters called, bloggers speculated. And in between every conversation, Stewart kept thinking about the truck, the nights of cold metal beneath their backs, Kevin curled against the window, both pretending sleep came easy. Pierce warned them to stay quiet, stay cautious. But danger found them anyway. One night, glass shattered, Someone had broken into their truck, leaving behind a threat scrawled on paper. "We know what you have." That was the moment Stewart understood. These drones weren't discoveries. They were leverage, power, secrets someone wanted just as desperately as he needed safety. And the world had just noticed the man who possessed them. The threat forced them into Pierce's guest cottage, a tiny sanctuary that felt like a palace after months on wheels. Stewart slept with one ear open, guarding the tarp-covered drones hidden in the truck bed. But safety didn't last long because the story of the drones traveled faster than they could contain it. Reporters showed up. Corporations raised their offers. Then came the first legal blow. The Skytech bankruptcy trustee claimed ownership of the prototypes, demanding a massive cut of any sale. Stewart felt the old dread return, the same helplessness he'd felt during Sarah's illness when bills drowned them faster than hope could resurface. But documents didn't lie, and neither did Raymond's final letter, unearthed from a metal box sealed years before. A letter meant for Sarah, but now carried forward by Stewart. "When the time is right, these will give you security." The timing had never been right, until now. Pierce pushed back against the trustee, negotiations grew fierce, and public sympathy, fueled by a journalist's emotional profile, tilted the scales. Offers climbed, then soared. One company stepped forward with a life-changing proposal, millions in cash, consulting work for both father and son, stability for years ahead. For the first time in a long time, Stewart allowed himself to imagine a permanent home, a place where Kevin wouldn't wake to parking lot lights flickering through cracked windows. But before contracts could be signed, everything fractured. During a quiet afternoon sorting the original plastic bundles, Kevin discovered a weight that didn't belong. A false bottom, a hidden compartment, and inside something smaller, darker, more dangerous than the others, a fourth drone. One stamped with markings that froze the air between them, Project Nightingale, classified, not to be liquidated, destroy upon order. Stewart didn't know it yet, but this drone would push him from corporate negotiations into the crosshairs of federal law. When the FBI agents arrived, stern faces, clipped voices, eyes that cataloged everything, they treated the fourth drone like a live wire. Project Nightingale was no myth. It was a shuttered domestic surveillance program accused of violating constitutional boundaries, quietly buried years earlier. And the device now sitting in Stewart's living room had no business existing. By discovering it, Stewart hadn't just found evidence. He'd stepped into the heart of a political bruise still tender beneath the skin of the government. The agents confiscated all 4 drones, promising protection but offering few guarantees. The sale paused, the future froze, and overnight the media storm erupted into a hurricane. Headlines speculated wildly. Some hailed Stewart as a hero, Others painted him as a reckless opportunist meddling in national secrets. But it was Congress that called next. They wanted Stewart to testify publicly about how the drones had survived, what Raymond might have known, and what secrets Nightingale had preserved. Stewart felt unprepared, unworthy, terrified, but Kevin believed in him with unwavering certainty. "Mom trusted you with this," he said softly. "Uncle Raymond trusted you. Don't let fear decide your story now." So Stewart agreed. Preparing for the hearing was like walking across a tightrope strung over a canyon of consequences. Lawyers coached him. Advocates briefed him. Kevin quizzed him late into the night. And when the day came, when cameras flashed and murmurs rippled through the room, Stewart felt the weight of every hardship press into his spine. But he spoke anyway, with honesty sharpened by suffering and softened by humility. He told them about the auction, the discovery, the homelessness, the hope, the fear. And the room listened, not to a politician, not to an engineer, but to a father who had fought for his son long before he fought for justice. His testimony cracked something open in the nation, something raw and human. Lawmakers questioned him fiercely, some with skepticism, others with empathy, but none could deny the sincerity in his voice. When the session ended, applause rose from unexpected corners of the room, and quietly behind closed doors, motions were drafted. Within days, the committee recommended that the government relinquish all claims to the first 3 drones. They also proposed compensation for the Nightingale evidence, $500,000 for the risk, the transparency, the integrity Stewart had displayed. The path cleared. The sale resumed. Vanguard Aerospace moved quickly, offering nearly $4 million for the prototypes and long-term consulting careers for both Stewart and Kevin. Signing the papers felt unreal, a simple pen stroke transforming a father and son who once rationed granola bars in parking lots into professionals with futures carved from promise rather than despair. The wire transfer hit. The consulting contracts became official. And Stewart's first act wasn't indulgence, it was gratitude. He invested in Francine's struggling diner, paid off pawn tickets for strangers because Leo had once treated him with dignity, donated to homeless programs for veterans who were living the life he had barely escaped. Then, together, he and Kevin moved into a modest home, nothing extravagant but theirs. A place where mornings smelled like coffee rather than cold air, where nights ended in warmth instead of worry. On the back porch, beneath a stretch of quiet stars, they sat side by side, letting the stillness soak in. For the first time in years, their breaths felt unburdened, and the house behind them, lit softly, alive with possibility, stood as proof that one gamble, one forgotten storage unit, had rewritten the ending of their story. In the months that followed, life didn't just stabilize, it flourished. Stewart found fulfillment in his consulting role, helping shape drone technology designed not for conflict but for rescue, for locating lost hikers in blizzards, for surveying disaster zones to save lives. Kevin thrived even faster, balancing work with the university degree he'd once abandoned, stepping into adulthood with the confidence of someone who had walked through hardship and emerged wiser. Their community, once scattered fragments of kindness, grew into a circle of friends who celebrated their victories and stood with them in quiet moments. The documentary about their journey premiered at a small festival, then rippled across the country as audiences connected with their resilience. Stewart never sought the spotlight, but he embraced the responsibility that came with it, advocating for veterans, for housing reform, for families trapped in cycles of debt. And every time he spoke, he remembered those nights in the truck when hope felt like a rumor. He remembered Sarah's laughter, Raymond's sacrifice, Francine's compassion, Leo's kindness, Bridget's patience. Their story wasn't built from luck alone. It was built from people who opened small doors when the world closed larger ones. A year later, as Kevin prepared to graduate, Stuart looked around at the backyard filled with friends, food, and laughter, the same yard where he had once sat trembling under the weight of uncertainty. Now joy filled the space that fear once occupied. And when the night grew quiet, when Kevin hugged him and whispered, "We made it," Stuart realized their journey wasn't a miracle. It was survival, persistence, and love woven through every impossible turn. But even as the celebrations faded, one final moment etched itself into Stuart's memory. A moment on the back porch, long after the house emptied and the music quieted. The moon hung low, pouring silver across the yard as he held his old Navy Challenge coin, feeling the grooves worn by years of struggle. Kevin stepped beside him, taller now, steadier, carrying his own future with unshakable purpose. "Dad," he said softly, placing his hand over Stuart's, "this life. None of it happens without you taking that chance." Stuart exhaled, the breath trembling with gratitude. The world had given him every reason to fold, yet somehow he had pushed forward, one painful step, one impossible decision, one last bid on a ruined storage unit. And now he stood in a home built not from luck, but from courage and love that refused to break. He closed his eyes and spoke to the memory of Sarah, to Raymond's unseen guidance, to every hardship that shaped him. "We're okay," he whispered. "We're finally okay." Then he stepped inside into the light, carrying with him the truth of their journey, that even in the darkest corners of life, something extraordinary can wait, wrapped in plastic, hidden in shadows, meant for the moment you're ready to fight for it. If this story touched you, if you felt the weight of their struggle or the glow of their victory, let your voice echo with theirs. Leave a like, share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stories brought to life with heart, grit, and truth. And before you go, where are you listening from, and what time is it right now?